Hello, viewers. Welcome to another segment of my show. In 2018, US Farm Bill was passed and federal law removed hemp-derived products from the drug enforcement agencies in the list of Schedule 1 substances. And since then, I must say, literally, there has been a hemplosion everywhere.
Yeah.
And as soon as you talk about hemp, you think about CBD, marijuana, and all those kind of drugs. And yes, today I'm going to talk about the miracle drug, CBD, cannabidiol. There have been a lot of questions in people's mind, although CBD is available in stores for purchase, like how is it that you can buy CBD oil legally when you can buy marijuana legally in so many states? Why has it suddenly become so popular? What are the health benefits and risks involved? Can you get addicted? And so many other things. So today, to answer all these questions, we have a friend of mine, a very enthusiastic and driven analytical chemist and scientist, Dr. Heather Watson, who has her own apothecary in which she extracts CBD oil, analyzes it, and sells it to people. So welcome, Dr. Watson. And before going ahead with your story of Southern Apothecary and CBD, could you please go ahead and tell us about your background?
Sure, thank you, Trupti. So I went to the University of Alabama and studied analytical chemistry. I focused on mass spectrometry, which is like weighing molecules, and then I got into separating them and determining what was in a complex mixture. And then for my postdoc, I worked in biochemistry on a children's disease, and I worked with proteins and just been fascinated forever about how things work in the body. And after that, I moved into industry and fats and oil chemistry. And there I learned how to start up a company and what some of the barriers are for growth and scalable growth. And we worked with engineering, and I learned so much from that opportunity. And then we started our own little venture about 2 years ago. So it kind of spun out naturally, but that's my background.
That's very interesting, and I know how passionate you are about molecular characterization and plant extraction. And let me add, Dr. Heather Watson is AOCS approved chemist, and she is on the ASTM D37 committee as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So could you please, so before starting, you all should know that she is a technopreneur and has a lot of ventures going on. So could you tell us your story about Southern Apothecary and your story about CBD? Also, could you put some light on your other ventures that you have in background going on?
Yes. So I never intended to have my own company. It was not one of those things that I always thought that I would do. It's just a passion now. I started seeing gaps and started filling them, but really my main passion is problem solving. And so as I was spending 8 years in biodiesel and fats and oils chemistry, I would see that some manufacturing sites would have problems, and then I would go and help fix them. So I ended up kind of doing consulting on the side. And I started seeing in the CBD hemp space on the West Coast where cannabis was legal, I started seeing some quality issues, and I didn't like the way 18-wheeler loads of hemp that had been sitting around and getting old was being extracted and then sold as CBD in large amounts to different companies who were marketing it for some of the larger labels. And I was a user once it became legal. I was using CBD, and then I didn't like the fact that they didn't have heavy metals testing, and they didn't have any other microbes that were being tested for. They were only really looking at the amount of CBD that was in there, and then how much THC. All they cared about was removing THC. They didn't care about how they got from the plant to the zero THC.
Yeah.
And there were no restrictions. There were nothing in place to regulate. And so I got involved traveling to fats and oils conferences and analytical chemistry conferences. I started going to the cannabis. They kind of met in secret because it wasn't widely accepted for us to even discuss the science of it because it was still listed as a Schedule 1. But we would start to talk about the quality issues because medical marijuana was legal in certain parts of our country, but we weren't able to really talk about it as scientists because we can't ship it across state lines. How are we going to help? I even learned that THC, this is how I really got passionate about it. THC was being pumped through tubes in babies' stomachs. It's for therapy and healing, but I asked, this is a heavy metal remediator. The plant sucks up all these heavy metals in the environment. And so are you testing for that? What's that threshold? And everybody's like, they're not. There's no regulation. So I was at a conference in one of those talks where everyone was really passionate about helping the communities where it was legal for recreational and medicinal, but it wasn't widely accepted for us to study the different components and how it affected the body, or it wasn't regulated for us to test for these things. And no one was talking about it, and they were just using. And so I was really wanting to get involved in helping children, especially when CBD was studied for the seizures in children. So I started getting involved back then, and then I started troubleshooting when it was being isolated on the West Coast. And so when I saw a quality problem and I was, trying not to look the other way, they were trying to tell me to not look at this, just test for this. And I was like, ooh, I don't like that. And I was using it. And so I just started making my own and studying all of the ways it could be extracted, the most effective ways. And honestly, I got involved because no one was doing it the way I thought was the most health beneficial, because that way is more expensive to do.
Right. Yeah,
that's how I got involved.
Oh, that's a very interesting story. And when you're curious about stuff, you really want to dig into the things and get it done right. Yeah. And so for the general viewers who don't know what THC is, THC means marijuana. And scientifically or technically, can you please put some light on what is the difference between CBD and THC or marijuana?
Sure. So, all right, the way I try to explain the types of cannabis is, so you have marijuana and you have hemp. They're both cannabis plants, but one has psychoactive components that are high. The THC is what's going to make you have these psychoactive results. So the people that call it getting high is from the high amounts of THC, and that is in marijuana. It is not high in hemp. Hemp is less than 0.3% THC, but we have more like 17 and 20% CBD, the cannabidiol, which is what's very popular right now. And so as long as we're keeping that THC low, there's no chance of you getting high, and it's just going to have the good therapeutic benefits of the stress reduction and the anti-inflammatory properties, but they're both from the cannabis plant. So my analogy is some mushrooms will also get you high, but some of them can go on pizza, but they're both mushrooms. So that's my analogy.
Cool. So related to this, is that possible to even have 0% THC CBD? Like, because I hear, as you said, it's always 0.3 to 0.5% of THC in CBD, how difficult it is, and what are the tests you do to make sure that it is less than the limits?
Right. So CBD is just one of the molecules that's found in hemp extract. So I don't even say that I sell CBD. I say that we make and sell hemp extract that is CBD rich, because the other cannabinoids that are there, like CBG and CBN, all of these things have health benefits, but they haven't been studied enough because we weren't allowed to at the time. So, and THC is one of the cannabinoids as well. So CBD really high, that's very good, but it's part of hemp extract. But most people have been over processing through pH control and different adsorbents to remove that THC. And then they try to capture the other components that they remove and try to put it back together in some way that resembles the original extract and sell it as broad spectrum. But they are trying to get all of that THC out. But they can't effectively replicate the proportions of all of those components to make it look like what the plant actually made. They're altering it and getting so involved that it doesn't have the same effectiveness in your body. I believe the plant was created with those perfect ratios of those compounds so that it could do what it needs to do in your body. It's a domino effect. And if you start to remove them and play with them, it's not going to work the same way. It's called an entourage effect. And so we've managed to trap all of the other molecules, not just the cannabinoids, but the terpenes. And you asked about the analysis. So we can do something called so we have HPLCs, it's the high performance liquid chromatography. And then that's separating all those components out. And then you use a detection method to determine what THC, what these amounts are. And you run standards just to show that your numbers are right. Or you can do it with something called a gas chromatograph. So there's different tests that we can do to look for those components. And that's what we do. We also send them off for third-party analysis.
Okay, good.
And so that shows that we're not being subjective because it's ours, right?
Right.
But I have sent off standards because I am a curious person. I've sent off things that have a known amount and labs have gotten it wrong. And so now I kind of operate in that space too, troubleshooting and helping labs get the right answer. So that's another fun thing that I do.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you control the heavy metal content in that when you said because it is
right? So yeah, so you have to start with the correct plant. So I don't control it. I don't have to remediate heavy metals because I start with a plant material that has already been tested for heavy metals and it's low. So you're worried about arsenic, mercury, lead. So anybody who is out there that is trying to vape CBD, also make sure that you're getting a quality, I don't put anything in my lungs, but if you are, there's a metal filament in there that's burning, and a lot of times heavy metals are in those as well. So even if your CBD that you're buying at a store says 0 mercury, that doesn't mean that the filament that's in there is safe. So be very careful about these things.
These are the kind of tips people want to know when they're going out vaping a lot these days.
They're all vaping, and I'm like, but you don't know what's in it. Just because the oil, if they did ask for something called a certificate of analysis, if you're going to, buy these products, ask for a certificate of analysis, and that's going to tell you how much of these molecules that you're really paying money for. You want to know that 17% CBD is there, and you want to know that it's less than 0.3 on THC, because there are people who have tested positive for THC at their jobs because they're getting something that was made who knows where and was never tested, and we don't want that to happen. So ask for the certificate of analysis.
So it is very strange for me. Is it not mandatory for these stores to provide with a COA already? Or
I believe the only person that what now?
Because they're playing with their lives. I mean, it's vaping something directly affecting their lives. So
I don't know if everyone is required, like for all types of oils that they're vaping. I don't think they are required to do that. And if they are, I have found a lot of people lying about it. A lot of people are lying on their certificate of analysis, and even the person that is selling it sometimes doesn't know how to read it, and so they don't know what they're actually selling.
Yes.
And so it's very scary. But think about the last time you went to a health food store and you said, where's your certificate of analysis for these fermented mushroom complexes? You don't do it.
Yeah.
But we're talking about it a lot in cannabis because we're concerned about these things, because there's a lot of people who are popping up in their garage that are trying to make this and make a quick buck, but they don't know what they're doing. But yeah, most people aren't requiring it because think about the other health food and nutritional things. Is this really 2,000 of like vitamin C when we go and buy that? We don't ever ask for that, but with CBD, we're talking about it a lot in cannabis.
Yeah. So I think that is a differentiating factor between the other CBD oils available over the counter and CBD from Southern Apothecary, where quality is the priority and you provide people with the certificate of analysis. Yeah. Perfect.
We do, right.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to learn these things from you and make
Yeah.
sure that I understand it right. So the last
Yeah.
question is, are there any concerns or risks regarding using the quality CBD oil routinely or in my daily life? Will I become addict to it?
Well, there's a certain kind of no, I would say no, but there is a certain type of addiction that is psychological and not, biochemical. So some people are addicted to smoking not because of the nicotine, because they'll replace it with something else, and it's the motion. Like, I want to have this in my hand. Like, I believe that certain people get into routines and they're addicted in a different way, but I've never heard of a biochemical, addiction to CBD. It's not habit forming or addictive in that way, no.
So on the contrary, if I don't become an addict, is that possible that I become tolerant to it and it doesn't make any effect on me anymore?
I haven't heard of that. I've actually not even had to increase my dosing for a year and a half. I still take the same amount that I did a year and a half ago, and it's still very effective. I was having difficulty sleeping, and I was having a lot of back problems from inflammation. But more than that, my mind wouldn't turn off at night. I thought about all the things that I wanted to do and all these conversations that I had, they would replay, and this just shut it all up, and then I just passed out. So I didn't sleep for several years, and now I sleep great.
That's very great to know. One last question. I'm sorry. So my question was, if a person is recovering drug addiction,
Yes.
can he take CBD oil, and is that going to adversely affect the recovering person?
So we've actually have a lot of studies on this. So opioid addiction acts on a different set of receptors, and it's very helpful actually to get the opioid, that pathway. If you switch over to the endocannabinoid system and use hemp extract instead, it will actually get them off of the addictive drugs. Now, I am not a medical professional, so I cannot actually legally say that.
Yeah.
But there are lots of scientific studies out there that say that. And I have a friend, her name is Dr. Uma in Massachusetts, and she actually specializes in drug recovery and getting people off of opiates. She actually calls cannabis the exit drug. It used to be referred to and demonized as a gateway drug, to using illicit things that were horrible, right? But now to get people off of the opioids that have been prescribed and overprescribed, that are highly addictive, people are switching to a cannabis-based product.
Yeah, I like the phrase. It's called the exit drug.
Yeah.
So is there any kind of approvals or licensing or any FDA regulations be followed before you start selling CBD?
I'm not in the, no, not to sell, but for extracting and for handling, I have to have all the state licensing for that. So I do have that through the Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
And then for the retail space, I believe that the main governing agency, you're going to have actual law enforcement that are just confirming that you have 0.3% THC and less. So they are checking the C of A's at storefronts. So they are doing that, and then they are free to take samples and test it themselves at the forensics lab at the state level.
Great. Okay. Okay. So if the person wants to buy CBD, he doesn't really need any doctor's prescription and just can go buy it?
Not for CBD. No, that has been, no. Just, I think in some states you have to have that for medical marijuana.
Okay.
But CBD is just over the counter, very helpful for most people.
Okay. So thank you very much for all this information about CBD. But before you leave, Dr. Watson, can you tell us about your other companies like Task Labs a little, so that people know that a person who is a scientist can also be an entrepreneur and can be an entrepreneur on different grounds, not just one company. So I would love to know about that.
Yeah, so my path has been interesting. I've done a little bit of everything, and I have 2 teenage daughters now, and so I really like what I'm doing. I help people. I like to connect and help them, and when they come back with their testimonials with Southern Apothecary, I'm just thrilled. But I also work with Task Labs. that is Tuscaloosa Analytical and Scientific Consulting. And then I have my own consulting business as well, just Watson Tech, that's not analytical. So anything that's analytical, you send it to me and I test it. That's through Task Labs. And then I also go in, and if someone's struggling to overcome a problem in the lab, technical, engineering, and scientific, I kind of go in, I have fresh eyes, and I go and help them problem solve. And I love all of them, I really do, but I think that's my favorite, is any problem solving. I love that. So I'm able to shuffle all of those things around pretty well.
Yeah, extremely interesting. It's a very diverse expertise you have, and you have a lot of I would call a multi-talented person. So it was
Thank you.
great to have you on the show. Thank you very much for taking time and sharing all your knowledge with us regarding the miracle drug CBD. I'm sure that a lot of my viewers uh, have great information from all the uh, tips and stories you shared about CBD. So, with that, I would like to
Yeah.
thank you, and I would like to thank the viewers for watching my show and supporting
Yes,
me all
thank you.
through. And keep watching my show for such informational videos. Thank you very much again, Dr. Watson. Thank you again for being there.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. See you.
Bye.